Hey, everybody. Welcome to another virtual conversation, raw, uncut, cupcakes, contraceptives, and conversation with pregnant possibilities. And my girl Veranda is here again. This is what, conversation 3 now?
This is.
Okay, so we've talked about emergency contraceptives. We've talked about just abstinence and safe sex and
In the withdrawal method.
the withdrawal method. Absolutely. Today we're going to talk about something that is, it's the subject, but I think it's so very necessary. I'm glad we're talking about it. And I just want to remind everybody while we're having this conversation, yes, it is just the two of us right now. But again, this is an open forum. We are welcoming all comments, questions, even if it doesn't have anything to pertain to today's conversation. And maybe it sparks a whole new conversation that we can have for future virtual events like this. So feel free to leave comments, to leave questions. There is no judgment zone here. Again, it's raw, it's uncut. We're just wanting to have a very honest, transparent conversation because I know, speaking for myself, this is something I'm passionate about. I feel like our youth, especially, doesn't have enough of these conversations. So why not have it from the source, okay, that can provide so many resources and so much information and clarity and answer so many questions. So let's just jump right into consent. What
Yes.
is consent?
So essentially, consent is an agreement to have a sexual encounter or to engage in any type of sexual activity with another person or a partner. If you do not have consent from a person, it is considered rape, sexual assault, or some type of sexual violence. So obtaining consent each and every time is absolutely important. And it could be just for kissing, it could be for any type of intercourse where there are three forms of sex. So anal, vaginal, oral, those all also require consent.
So kind of like a two-part question. What is the conversation? Can it be body language? Does it have to be no? Does it have to be yes? Or can it be like, I don't know, like are there ways that you can communicate consent?
Yeah, and so that's actually a good question because most people are under the conception that if someone says no, right, then that's consent. Even if someone doesn't say no, for instance, if they're kind of giving you like quiet moves, they're moving back, if they don't necessarily respond, or they don't agree with the sexual activity or their behavior, it's still considered non sexual consent.
Okay.
So, no, a person doesn't actually have to say no for it to be considered consent. They can actually, kind of back off, shy away, all of those things. You have to have a firm yes. And I'm going to say a yes every time. So people are like, okay, well, I'm in a relationship with this person. I'm married. Even if you are married to a person and you guys have been married, let's just say 30 years, you still have to get consent at every encounter. And so
I
that's just
see.
something that you have to be aware of. You also need to be aware of when you can't provide consent. So a person cannot provide consent if they're being pressured, meaning if someone is pressuring me into doing something that I may not want to do, that maybe there's some other things happening, I'm in this environment, it's considered pressure. If I'm being manipulated, and sometimes that even goes into trafficking, right? That's a major thing
Yeah.
in many different states. But if I'm being manipulated to do something, it's not consent. If someone is impaired, meaning they're under the influence, drugs, alcohol, they're passed out, it is not consent because you do not have a firm yes to engage in any type of activities with another person.
Now, along the lines of just like the communication, like we spoke of there, and okay, say a person does know that if this person is intoxicated or they're not really giving me sure signs that it's a yes, um, you have all these things kind of to lean on as far as like, okay, got it. But how can a couple or a person that's maybe interested in having sex with someone or is uncertain, whatever the case may be, they're dipping and dabbing in the idea of this could happen, what are some steps they can take to kind of help ease into that? Like, I don't want to say conversation, but I guess it is a conversation because essentially if you're giving somebody the impression that it's okay to do this sexual activity, but is there a way that a person can kind of warm up to that so that I don't know, I don't, you understand what I'm trying to ask?
So,
Right?
And so here's what I say, and this is what I tell you all the time. You always want to have a firm, consistent answer. So I'm going to give you a scenario, right? Let's just say you're hanging out with a guy, and the guy's like, all right, do you want to come to my house? Maybe we can just hang out. And you're like, maybe, I don't actually know. Maybe I want to come over. I'll think about it. All of those things. Versus if I'm saying like, yeah, no, I'm not coming.
Right.
Or yes, I am coming. Those answers and responses look different. Even in the midst of like, hey, um, I'm saying my mom not home tonight. Can you come through? Can you come over? I'm trying to kick it with you, whatever. When you are playful and it comes off as if you're joking, sometimes people don't necessarily take you serious. And let me be clear, that does not give anyone a pass to think that they can move forward if they don't have clear consent. However, when you have a firm, consistent answer, it's not a gray area where somebody may feel like, oh, I have the opportunity to move forward. So I say when it comes to having sexual conversations, you want to be clear about your boundaries in each person, whether male or female, because anyone can experience assault. So what people should know is rape, sexual assault, and sexual abuse have different legal definitions per state. And in general, it's a form of violence where sexual consent was not given, and there was some type of vaginal or anal penetration or oral, or it could even be include genital touching. Now we have this movement where some people feel like they were assaulted verbally, right?
Yeah.
Because people make improper jokes. Um, or things of that manner. So you have to be aware, because the reality is anyone can be a victim no matter their gender, sexual orientation, or their age. So sexual consent is important because the last thing you want to do is get involved in some type of case because you didn't get consent. I'm
Yeah.
even going to take it a step further and talk about consent when you're sharing pictures. If
Okay.
you receive a picture, right, from a friend, like, hey, this girl sent me a picture, I'm sharing it with my friends. What you should know is if you share that picture with someone else, is now considered child pornography if you're under a certain age. So those are things that you have to be aware of. And I've been in school districts where several students' phones have been confiscated just for sharing pictures, because you didn't have the legal right or consent from a person to share their photos. So it could be, that simple.
I like that you said that though, because we're in an age where Snapchat, Instagram, the disappearing messages. Now with iPhone, you can unsend something. So we're in the era where sending these sort of pictures and conversations is obviously consistently being done. But I do have a question regarding the age. So I know, okay, so what is the age? You said at a certain age, it's child pornography if they're caught sharing, right? So what's that, maybe under?
So in the state of Ohio, the age of consent is 16,
Okay.
meaning that in order for someone to engage with an adult, anyone that's over the age of 18, that minor has to be at least 16 years of age. If they're under that age, whether you know or not, you are essentially at fault for engaging with a minor if that person that you engage with is under the age of 16. So in the state of Ohio, the age of consent is 16.
Okay.
Each state is different. So if someone is listening from another state, you would have to look up your particular laws in your state, but the age for the state of Ohio is 16.
Yeah. Now, can a person who's over 16 still find fault in their picture being shared? Like, is that still okay?
Yeah. So in the event that pictures are being shared without the consent of another person, there can be consequences and repercussions for those actions.
Yeah. I really like that we added in the picture sharing, because I think it's so easy for people to just be like, man, I didn't even do nothing. I just shared it with my boy or my girl. But it's like, if that person, probably that person, well, maybe, I don't know. There probably are circumstances where a person feels pressured into sending something. Like you might get the text like, no, girl, send me that picture. You like, but I don't know. And you're pressured into doing it, and then you do it. So you're already hesitant about the one person. Now you got to worry about that person sharing it with multiple people. And I don't know about y'all, but I've seen TV shows. I watch a lot of SBU. And I mean, but I feel like these are stories that they say they're, they're fake or falsified or fiction, whatever. But we know they come from real experiences, and this has
Oh,
happened
for
to
sure.
people. So when you think about it like that, it's like this really does happen all the time, and what you might think is, innocent because I just let my one friend see it, like, we all cool. No, like some of these pictures, let's keep it a buck. You know, they're not safe photos. You know what I mean? Like people's whole beings are being exposed. So
Mhm.
down to even if you feel like, now again, I'm keeping it book, like you might send a photo that doesn't show your face, but there might be other parts of your body that identify who you are. If it's a tattoo, if it's something that can still basically tell that that's you. It's just it's invasion of privacy. It's all of that. It's child porn. It's all of that. It's everything that you said is wrong. So just please,
Yes.
please be mindful that consent is not just a physical act. Okay, it's a verbal act. It's a text messaging, those pictures, all of that. Um, Something else I wanted to go back to that you said when you were saying, be assertive, be strong with your your response. If you know you don't want to have sex with somebody, you alluded to, sometimes people can talk about it in a jokingly way. For example, I don't know if this is popular as it was before, but remember when Netflix and chill was a thing,
Yeah,
but
right.
Netflix and chill wasn't really Netflix and chill. People knew that Netflix and chill meant that was just their way of getting you over, but then it was basically hoping to be, maybe some sexual activity going down afterwards. So it's like, yeah, ha, that's cute. Okay, we can Netflix and chill. But if you know all you're trying to do is the Netflix part, and there is no other whatever you thought was going to happen after, then again, you really do have to be firm. There is nothing wrong with you telling that person, hey, we can Netflix and chill, but when I tell you it's literally going to be Netflix, matter of fact, I done picked out the movie, we gonna chill, ain't gonna be nothing else. Like you, it's so important that you respect yourself enough, but even your partner, because sometimes we can, in our fear of, either not being accepted or liked or whatever it is that's keeping you from being honest about your stance within something, especially about sex. I feel like sometimes it's like, all right, well, I don't want to look like a prude, or I don't want to look like, but you're allowing this person to get mixed feelings, and it doesn't make it right if they act on that. But I'm just saying, like, just respect each other and just be honest and very firm about what it is you either want to do or you don't want to do.
And let me also add to that because I think you made a very valid point. What people should know is let's just say you start. You could be naked and be like, all right, I want to do this, and be like, nah, I'm
No,
not here
right.
for it. At that point, that person says no, whether you've already inserted, you have, taken your clothes off, whatever the case may be. At the point someone says no and or stop, you no longer have their consent to move forward. And so it requires you to, in that moment, to stop, because if not, you are still held to those sexual assault, or rape laws if you don't stop in that moment when you're being asked to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point, because you might not be with the follow through, and that's cool. Cut it off and be very firm about it. And then again, just a reminder, everyone, if you are thinking of something like, dang, I wish I could get this answer, just feel free to leave it. If you don't feel comfortable leaving it in the actual comment, I think you can message, or however you want to. Just make sure you get those questions to us, because if we can't address them today, then we obviously can address them in future conversations. And it could spark, again, like I said, a whole nother conversation, or we might have to, back to another topic and just kind of refresh. But just want to encourage you to please feel free to be honest in the comments and your questions, because that's what this is about, just making sure that we have the honest conversation that isn't being had enough. So let's talk about some myths a little bit when it comes to consent. I feel like consent, if I'm being honest, when you think about the definition of it, seems very simple. But I can see how people will try to confuse it, or it can be confusing, or they'll, twist it, whatever. So it becomes more challenging than what it is. So if somebody doesn't say no, right, then it's not sexual violence. Is that true or false?
That is false. So, as I said, you do not have to say no. Like, I can say nothing and I can kind of back off, I can shy away. As I said, we can kind of already start and then I'm be like, yeah, no. So there are several different things. You could have had sex with a person or just some type of sexual engagement, whether it's kissing, touching, oral, anal, whatever the case, with a person 2 weeks ago, and today they're like, yeah, no, that means that you cannot engage in that activity. So whether it was a yes the first time and it's a no today, you don't have consent. You have to get consent for each individual encounter, no matter what it is and no matter who the person is. Some other myths that you need to be mindful of is um, if someone is turned on and it's like, we've already started, right? I've already started in the act and I don't know how to stop. I can't stop, like I'm too far gone. No. If someone says no or they're pushing you off of them, whatever the case may be, you have to stop. One other thing is, I think at parties, sometimes things are happening. If someone is impaired and they may say yes to you under the influence, you don't have consent. If you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, I encourage you to stay clear away from any sexual content and activities because it could turn into something else.
Now, let me ask you something. Is the consumption of drugs or alcohol, is there a limit, or can a person say they had one drink? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, do you have to, is there a level that you have to be intoxicated or whatever before they can be like, oh, you're impaired? Or
So I'm not an attorney and I don't want to profess to be one. However, what I am going to say is impairment is different for each person because my level of drunk based off of how many drinks I had could be different from somebody else's level of drunk. If it's someone's first time engaging in alcohol, they could probably absolutely be drunk because their body has no tolerance of that substance.
right.
So I'm not going to say how many drinks it is. What I am going to say, if someone is impaired, meaning they are not at their normal state, their thinking is altered,
Yeah.
you cannot engage. So it could be that I only had one drink, but that could mean that I'm still drunk. It could mean that I had three drinks, I'm sorry, and I'm fine according to my standard. The reality is if someone has illegal substances in their body and they go, let's just say something happens, they make a report and there's a toxicology done and they're finds something to be in their system, the other person is at fault.
Yeah.
And that could be one drink or two drinks.
Right, depending on the person.
Exactly, depending on the person. So I would just say stay clear, especially in most times. What you should know is some things happen in the midst of parties or things that are happening when these drugs or how alcohol is being exchanged, because sometimes people are heightened. So those are just things to be aware of. But what you should know is about 40% of sexual violence cases come from someone that people know. Mm-hmm. So it could be I'm hanging out with my friends, and hanging out with my friends, we're gonna, just drink and party. And then maybe one person goes too far because they've had too much.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to just highlight again, is that 40% come from people that, I know sometimes the fear, especially for women, is we fear it's a perfect stranger, somebody you've never engaged with, never even seen, possibly attacked you in the process. But a lot of times, 40%, it's the person you know. So you think that you have this relationship with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and you're like, but I know her, like, she respects me, she trusts me, but then she takes advantage of you, or then he takes advantage of you. And you might be conflicted because you're like, but I know this person, like that's my boy, that's my girl. But no, it does not make it right just because you've had a relationship, which leads me to the next myth that you mentioned earlier. But I think, just diving in that a little deeper, if you're married, you know what I mean? Well, I guess still the same thing, girlfriend, but let's just take it to marriage, because I think in marriage, it's like, oh, like this gotta happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, we married now, like this my due diligence as a wife, this my due diligence as a husband to make sure that we getting it in. Like, so you owe me that because we married. Mm-hmm. Okay. But that doesn't mean that you could just take it. That doesn't mean that you can just disregard if I want to on this particular day or not. So is it still considered rape if you go against consent with your spouse?
And so I'm going to take it a little bit further. And I'm not saying anybody is particularly religious or not, but sometimes people, can go to the Bible and they're like, oh, well, it says that a man and a woman, their bodies are not their own once they become married. Well, I understand what the Bible says. However, according to the state of Ohio law, in the event that you get engaged in activity with your partner, spouse, and you do not have consent, it is considered a sexual violence, assault, and or rape. So whether you are married, it is your significant other, you have to get consent for each encounter. And I'm even gonna say that's like because you feel like you're entitled to it or I'm gonna roll over or whatever. I'm gonna say you guys have to have that conversation about what your boundaries are. And I say that for anyone.
Yeah.
Having an understanding of what your boundaries are. Also understand what your non-negotiables are. I feel like every person should have a list of things that you're willing to not do or to do and not do. For instance, if you say, yeah, I'm engaged in sexual activity and you decide to engage with someone and then they bring someone else into that encounter or into that exchange, okay, I didn't agree to that. I said that I would have sex with you or an encounter with you. And if you bring someone else, that requires a whole nother level of consent. In the event that the terms or the agreement of what was decided changes, it requires an additional consent.
Yeah.
So you can't consent to say, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and then the parameters of that discussion change. Because once it changes, it requires a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. And the conversation is so key. I love that it's a part of our conversation, the title and everything, but one of the most I mean, it's literally the glue. I feel like when we have these segments, like, okay, from talking about withdrawal, from talking about contraceptives, from talking about consent, conversation is so key. Being able to communicate, your feelings, your boundaries, consent, all these things. So I think that's a very important factor to have. If you can't even communicate, if you can't have a conversation with the person that you are engaging in something is intimate and serious for so many reasons as sex, like that's already a red flag. You know what I mean? Like if they're not allowing you to feel comfortable with who you are in that space or what you like or what you don't like, that's already a red flag. So if you're watching this and you're like, dang, like I can't even have that conversation with this person, you might not want to carry on. And then if you're married and you're in a married situation and you're like, but I'm married, well, you might have to. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not no counselor or nothing like that, but I'm just think the conversation is so key in every segment that we've discussed. Like, if you're not able to articulate consent, if you're not able to articulate your feelings and your boundaries and all these things, that's already a red flag. It should make you kind of like step back. And if not, critique your own individual being, but just look at that person like, hey, you might not be worth this for some reason.
And you never want to think that it's going to change the mood because you have to have that conversation. I always say communication is the foundation for any type of relationship, whether it's a friendship,
absolutely,
boyfriend and girlfriend, whatever the case. I say there's many a type of ships, and it could be a work relationship, right? It could be a contract, whatever. There's several different types of relationships. It all requires communication. So you can't think of, hey, I have to have this conversation about my consent, about how far I'm willing to go, what I'm willing to do in the bedroom, especially with social media, especially with television, right? The music that we listen to, the reality is sex is everywhere. Sex is, you can't legit scroll TikTok, Instagram without seeing something sexual, maybe even hearing about it. So having that conversation allows for each person to understand what their boundaries are, what they're willing to do, their likes, their dislikes. And when you decide to say yes to someone or move past, move past a normal setting and move into something more intimate, it for sure requires conversation, because just because you like something or you're into something or you're comfortable with something doesn't mean that other person is.
Right. Yeah.
So having a real honest feedback and dialogue about what those things are, I always say you're non-negotiable. These are my guidelines. These are the things that I'm willing to do, and these are the things that I'm not.
Yeah. So if you don't have that already kind of written up in your mind or somewhere physically, I would suggest that you do, because I think it's so vital to these experiences that we have in life, especially with our significant other. So definitely good to know. Before we wrap up, somebody might be watching and they're saying, okay, this is great, I'm taking it all in, but I still have more questions. I still need more. I still need more understanding something. Can they, I mean, I know they can come pregnant with possibilities, but what would you say is the next step? Like, who do they reach out to? Is it you and your team? Is it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
if they can't talk to this SO.
so I would say that you can always reach out to us at pregnantwithpossibilities.com or contact our office at 216-510-5101. There are also several different clinics that can also help, and just resources online. If you want to find out more information about the things that we've said here today, you can actually do your own research, right? Finding out, like, what should I know? Like, what can and cannot do? So the internet is at your fingertips. Most people have some type of device or phone, but we are always here to assist and support if you have any additional questions. We always want to hear from the audience because it drives our conversation. So if there's a topic that you want us to talk about, if there's something that you've heard in the past and you want us to take a deeper dive into that topic, please, by all means, reach out to us. We would love to. I think for this next conversation, if you guys don't know that not a few weeks ago, but last week, the governor declared that isolation, right? Social isolation, which are things that we've experienced in COVID, is a public health crisis. So people are also having mental health episodes and all of those things. So if you're feeling like you're isolated, you don't have anyone to talk to, your mental health is in jeopardy, I definitely say seek help, especially if you are in the midst of wanting to do self-harm. But when it comes to your sexual health, or even if you've experienced some unwanted sexual comments from someone and you just feel like, hey, I need to figure out, like, this is normal, whether it's in the workplace, most work places have policies around those things. So look at your policy. They have confidential lines that you can disclose these things. So just be aware of your rights when it comes to your body, and researching the best decision and where to go based off of your scenario.
Absolutely. Veranda, you are the bomb. I thank you guys so much for everything that you guys do, just the insightful information, but just your physical organization for what you guys do resource wise for our young people and just people in general. If you are interested in the conversations we've had before, like you said, we've talked about several things. This is just one of the many. These videos stay, they don't disappear. So you can always go to our website, zhiphopcleveland.com, our Facebook page, YouTube, and just pull them up. You know, even this one, if you're like, dang, what did she say about, run that thing back and then share it too, because, you know, again, these are resources that really are here for us. You just might not know. You might not have seen them or known how to get them, but they're literally right here. And I'm so thankful that we're providing this platform, because we can say that, we got it. We got your resource. We got, we got it for you. So replay this video, share this with your friends and family. And then one thing I did want you to just mention again, because we're doing this virtually and we do target a lot of young people, you guys will physically come into a school to have these conversations too, right?
Absolutely. And so what you should know is a House bill is changing in the state of Ohio that is actually requiring schools to offer sexual health education. What you should know, though, is in the state of Ohio, you only have to produce abstinence-based education only. But the reality is that students are going to engage in sex or be curious about it. So we might as well provide them comprehensive. And so comprehensive sexual health education talks about, is one, medically informed, but it talks about everything from abstinence to contraceptive methods. It talks about the risks and consequences of sexual health. Our program also has an experiential learning component where we have real care babies. So the babies that students are able to take home for 24 to 48 hours overnight, we also have that as a part of our program, as well as goal accomplishment. We understand that students accomplishing their goals, so that one, right, temporary opportunity doesn't have to derail their life for a long period of time. So we also talk about those things. So our comprehensive sex education program is available for students in their school district. So if you are administrator, wraparound resource, social worker, whatever the case may be, we would love to come out and prepare a presentation to talk about the work that we do, just so you're aware. What schools should know is that 50% of all STI and STD cases are from youth ages 15 to 19 every year. We are seeing a high rise and a high tick of sexually transmitted diseases in the school. So although the premature pregnancy rates have went down, it does not mean that the STD and the STI rates have went down. So being able to educate and ensure that students are making safe and healthy decisions is what we do. And that's our number one goal on a daily basis.
Yeah, dope. So thank you so much.
Stat. I'm sorry.
Good.
So last year we had our program evaluated by researchers at Cleveland State, and what we found is that 60% of the youth that we serve never had sexual health education. However, 40% of those youth were already sexually active. So what does that mean? Students are not receiving the information that they need to make good decisions, or they're informing their friends based off of what they're heard, and doesn't mean that it's medically accurate or it's the proper information. So we as a society, as parents, as educators, even as youth, we all have a responsibility to make informed decisions and have accurate information.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's major. When you really break down like that, numbers don't lie. One last thing I did want to say, because it's just something I kind of feel and see as a trend, because of the world we live in and the way social media especially glorifies certain things, and people can be like, oh, I'm not cool if I don't do this, or this doesn't make me look cool, or you have to look. It's all about the look, right? At the end of the day, there is nothing cool about, being sexually assaulted. There's nothing cool about not feeling respected with your body, with your feelings. There's nothing cool about not knowing vital information that could save your life or your baby's life, or none of that is. There's nothing cool about that. What's cool is the exact opposite. It's being prepared. It's having the knowledge. It's having the confidence. It's having the assurance that you care enough about yourself. You care enough about your loved ones that you do want to get this information. So if you're sitting there and you like, man, like I would love to share this with somebody, or I don't know, like this, they gonna think I'm whack for this. No, they not. Who cares what they think? You know what I mean? Like, I'm big on circles, and that includes from my most intimate people to just associates. If those people do not align with the way that I feel, if they don't care about, my morals and my beliefs, and just, y'all know what I'm trying to say, like, cut them people loose. I don't care who they are, because at the end of the day, there's nothing cool about the negative impacts of what we're talking about. You know what I mean? So don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel like you can't be yourself. Don't feel like you could be honest. You 1000% can. And you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. So let this conversation be a stepping stone to you gaining that confidence and having the appropriate conversations, getting the appropriate resources. Because I feel like it's an each one teach one society too. So we talk about sharing with our friends, but some people don't have good friends. You know what I mean? Like, they're giving them BS left and right, or they're not giving them nothing. So you can literally be the change that you want to see, especially in a sexual driven society. So thank you so much, because I really do love these conversations. I look forward to having them, and I hope that you guys do participate with the questions and conversations so that we can continue to have them. But if you have any questions, if you want to prolong the conversation and you want to even get more in depth, please reach out to Veranda and her team, because they're amazing, and she's got all the resources you need. So
yes, and just in closing, you said something that was valuable, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't share this tip. In the event that you've experienced the negative effects of consent, there are so many resources available. I'm going to do a shameless plug to the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. They have a free hotline, a call, and a text line where you can remain anonymous. Please, if you have experienced the adverse and you need someone to speak with for counseling, you have some questions, concerns, please, by all means, reach out to them. Their phone number is 216-619-6192. And that's the Cleveland Rape Crisis.org.
Again, another resource they probably didn't know they had. We just don't talk about it enough. So thank you so much again. I can't wait to our next conversation. And you have the ability to leave that if you want. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them, and then we'll see you guys next time. All right, you're a mother, right? Yeah, you're a mom. Happy Mother's Day. Happy early Mother's Day.
To you. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.